Hi, I'm Julie Janson, and I'm one of the senior editors at Over the Horizon, or OTH. If you've been following OTH, and we hope you have, you know that we started a human domain series this year to look at this often overlooked but critically important domain. We've published some great articles, but today what we want to present you is a primer which will give you some basic words, terms, and concepts when looking at this domain. This is just a primer. If you are very familiar with the human domain, you might find this a little rudimentary. But the important thing here is to develop a shared language so that we can further the conversation. And when it comes to this, we hope you'll participate. Please email us and give us your ideas, areas you'd like us to explore, or even your own articles. Special thanks to Jeff Riley, whose ideas have greatly informed what I'm going to be presenting to you today. So a quick overview. I'm going to go into the 6 domains as we at OTH see them, give you an idea of what the human domain is, break down the 3 main elements of the human domain, give some examples of each and things to think about, give you a caution about bias, and then give you some resources in case you need some help moving ahead. So let's get started. At Over the Horizon, we maintain that there are 6 domains. Your 3 traditional domains, air, land, and sea, the space domain, the electromagnetic spectrum domain, which includes cyber, and of course, the human domain. Now, while all of the domains are critically important, activities in each of those domains are ultimately looking to achieve effects in the human domain. It's the domain where humans are making the decisions that affect all the other domains. Putting boots on the ground, contesting territorial waters, contesting airspace, attacking a satellite, or cutting off communications. These are all decisions made in the human domain. As you can see here, we break down the human domain between leaders, organizations, and populations. So let's get more into that. There is no joint definition of the human domain. We have no structured concept, no taxonomy, even though it is a critically important domain, as I just discussed. So let's start with the most basic element of that, a definition. The human domain, as I mentioned, is broken down into leadership, organizations, and populations. When looking at these 3 elements, we want to look at their perceptions, their decision-making behavior, what support they need to receive, and ultimately, behavior. Because at the end of the day, it always comes down to behavior. Someone can change their perceptions as much as we like, but if they're not acting in ways that benefit us, then we haven't really accomplished anything. Now, despite the importance of this domain, it's something that we tend to take for granted. But our adversaries don't. Russia considers information warfare to be its primary weapon of choice. So we have to get more serious about this. And of course, the first step is gaining a common understanding. So the human domain impacts all levels of planning, tactical, operational, and strategic. To give you a better understanding of this, I'm going to break down these 3 elements using an example from each of the levels of operations. So let's start with leadership at the strategic level. If you've opened a newspaper or looked online today, you know that nukes are back in the conversation. A leader of a nuclear state is someone who's critically important at the strategic level, and it's critically important to understand them. So when looking at these leaders, first of all, we need to assess how important are nukes to this person. Is this the foundation of their power? Is there something else that they could rely on if they didn't have nuclear weapons to maintain their power? And then we have to get into the way that they think and the way that they make decisions. Is this someone who follows their gut and just makes a call based on how they feel? Is this someone who gathers a ton of information before making a decision? How many advisors does this person have? Who are these advisors? Sometimes it could be a leader's mom. That's the range of what we're looking at. So we have to look at these things because if we don't understand these leaders, then it could have catastrophic consequences, especially in the realm of nuclear weapons. Looking down at the operational level, let's look at some companies. So when you're, let's say, looking at an operation, you may just look at the countries involved and the militaries that they possess. Well, companies can play a really important role in this if they're a critical support organization to the country in question. So let's say country Y is critical for us. We need access to their air, access to their waters, and even maybe putting boots on the ground. Well, if there's a company that is a key supporter of that country, which disagrees with these movements, maybe because it's going to break up a critical business deal, that could make your entire operation fall apart. Therefore, it's very important not just to understand the leaders within countries and the militaries within countries, but the key support agencies that are involved. This is not just limited to companies. This can include religious organizations, churches, nonprofits, and other entities as well. So it's a broad scope, but don't worry, we're going to get to some resources at the end that can help you. Finally, getting down to the tactical level. One of the most important things that we consider in the military is when you have a situation of troops in contact. There are troops whose lives are literally at risk. So one thing that we will often do in response to this situation is a show of force. This is it bringing in an aircraft, for example, the A-10, really fast and loud and terrifying in order to try to get people to stop firing. Now, this has different implications. If the troops on the ground have never seen this aircraft, maybe they're terrified. Maybe they drop their weapons and leave. However, if they've been seeing this aircraft a lot, they might be desensitized to it and just keep firing. Or worse, if they've seen this aircraft a lot and they're getting angrier and angrier about the situation and country, this might actually embolden them or cause them to dig in even more and fight harder. So it's a really important thing to keep in mind that you need to understand even tactical units on the ground because it can cost human lives. So now that we've covered 3 examples, I want to give you a caution about bias. There's an entire presentation that we can give on bias, and we're going to. But for now, just keep these shortcuts in mind. If you hear someone saying, well, I know what I would do in this situation, or here's what we've always done in this situation, or here's what we did last time, and that worked, so let's do it again. This is when bias is coming into play, and it can lead to critical mistakes. So please tune in on our future podcasts on bias, and keep it in mind whenever you're in a planning situation. Okay. Pretty simple, but it's a lot. The human domain is obviously so broad and there's so much to understand. So having the right resources is critical. If you've been reading our human domain series, you know that we maintain, when working with the military, information operations officers, enlisted or civilians are your subject matter experts in the human domain. There's also a lot of resources in the interagency realm. A lot of the agencies have experts in leadership or even specific organizations, which is a level of expertise that is unparalleled. Also, academia is ripe with opportunities to learn more about your target audience or the leaders, organizations, and populations that you're dealing with. And don't just limit yourself to psychology in this realm. While we want to know how people think, there are other realms that are very informative when it comes to the human domain, such as anthropology, sociology, even criminology. So sky's the limit there. Finally, the intelligence community is very helpful in this domain. They get reports and provide analysis that really help us understand who we're dealing with. So that's it. That's what we have on the human domain. We hope that you've enjoyed this presentation, and once again, keep in mind, it's an initial primer, so we'll be back with more. If you have specific ideas that you want to contribute, please email us. This can be requests for future video casts, ideas for articles, or even your own articles. And please follow us on social media and engage in the conversation. That's what we're here for. Hope you enjoyed this, and have a great day.